I'm going with some Bill Withers.
I like it.
Man. All you want to do is use me. Oh man, Bill, man, Tony, I gotta kick off this Memorial Day with Bill Withers. Keep on using me till you use me up.
That's a great cut, man. A great cut. Lots of soul.
Yeah, man, it don't get more soul than Bill Withers, man. And hey, Tony, I want to say happy Memorial Day to you. And I know that you've got family, and we've got family. Everyone has family in one way, shape, or form that has contributed to the fight to keep this country going, etc. So shout out to you and happy Memorial Day to you and your family.
Hey, back to you, Brother Jeff. It's good to be with you today. Happy Memorial Day to everybody out there, those that served. I appreciate that. And those who stand up and speak against our military-industrial complex at the same time. And so it's a great Memorial Day, and good to spend some time with you, Brother Jeff.
We're still sheltering in place, not jumping out into this economy real like I'm not running out into the economy. And I'm encouraging black folks to, since we've been hit very hard with this COVID-19 situation, a lot of folks haven't talked about some guidance in terms of how we should approach this, but I'm encouraging folks who can stay in to stay in, but that's a paradox because most of the front-facing work is black and brown folks and folks with limited incomes, etc., that have to get out there and, do hit or miss and maybe and not know, etc. But if you got to get out, still stay safe. They're telling you to support the economy, but support your health first. Put your health first. What are your thoughts on that, Tony?
No, I agree wholeheartedly, Brother Jeff. It's been heartbreaking to see the disproportionate impact on the black community that COVID-19 has had. It was predictable, but to watch it play out has been horrific. And so, to your point, it's a privilege for us to be able to stay home. For those that can't, it's going to be up to our continued community support to be sure that we're staying healthy and helping each other out. So I encourage everybody to stay home if they can. If you can't, be safe out there. And I think we're going to be looking at the ramifications of this, Brother Jeff, for years to come. And it's going to be important that marginalized communities of all sorts come together to get through this in the best way that we can.
Well, I'll tell you all free thinkers out there, I've got Tony Pigford joining us today on this Memorial Day. Family goes back generations, maybe 5 generations or more, right here in, right here in the 5 Points area, as a matter of fact. A pillar family in terms of the development of the community, highly engaged. Tony Pigford ran for city council, garnered a lot of support, came up just a little bit short, but I'm pretty sure we haven't seen the last of you, Tony, politically. But I want to thank you for all that you continue to do, because what you said you were going to do if elected are many of the things you just continue to do anyway. You haven't gone away. You've still been speaking truth to power and also looking at the X's and O's of what's happening. And I'm going to hit everybody with this trigger alert by saying this is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out right now. Tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Tony Pigford is in the building. And Tony, I want to just jump right into this. I've been getting several calls a day. I've been getting lots of emails from various sides of individuals that have been talking about this Park Hill golf course. Like, what is it? What is it not? Folks, I'm hearing people say things that I've heard for decades about we need a grocery store. And I'm like, wasn't that the argument that we needed a grocery store in the Dahlia Shopping Center? And wasn't that the story in all of the different places about what we need, and then what we get is perhaps something different? But Can you just bring me up to date on what you're hearing about this Park Hill golf course?
Yeah, sure. It's a pretty hot topic. I mean, we're talking about 155 acres of beautiful open space, really the last open space that we've got left in the city that hasn't been impacted by unbridled, rampant development. And it's a very unique case. It's unlike anything else that's going on in the city, primarily because of, and you know all these different legal intricacies, Brother Jeff, but because of the conservation easement. Like it's got a perpetual conservation easement that Mayor Webb ensured was in place that doesn't allow any development currently. So between the conservation easement and it being zoned open space with a developer that has really strong political ties with the city of Denver recently purchasing the property, it's stirred up a lot of speculation about development and what potentially will happen at that golf course.
Well, my question to you, Tony, is this, and this is just my perspective. There hasn't been a dollar that this current administration is not willing to take. It's like if they smell a buck in the air, and if they could put up a piece of concrete, or if they can make a deal or build something up taller, those gates are wide open. And so I'm not against development, not at all, but it just seems like the Mile High Income City hasn't seen a project that it wasn't willing to engage in if it lined the pockets of those who are, in those inner circles and in those special networks and all of those different things. When we're talking about this easement and development, the reason I'm more interested is, didn't the taxpayers pony up for that easement? Isn't that our money? Isn't that our guarantee in terms of what was to move forward, in terms of what we wanted? And the greedy money takers, they took the money. Now is that they want to change the deal, or like what's going on?
Yeah, to your first point, I brought some visual aids with me, Brother Jeff. Like, this is the ultimate test of the strength of crony capitalism. And I know we've talked about crony capitalism before, but this is really gonna show us how strong crony capitalism is in our city. And to your second point, and the definition on there, if I didn't give the viewers a chance to read, it is businesses thrive not as a result of risk, but as a return on money amassed through a nexus between the business class and the political class.
Wow.
That's crony capitalism, when that nexus of the business and political class comes together.
Where did that definition come from? I've heard you talk about that, and I definitely am intrigued. Where did that definition come from?
That one, I believe, might be Wikipedia. Merriam-Webster's got a pretty good definition. Different authors have written about crony capitalism. I encourage people to research it. But basically, it's what happens when the business and political class come together and who is most rewarded. So, to your point about our city being for sale and Denver not seeing a deal they didn't like, that's been, in my opinion, crony capitalism. So, to your second point, yes, taxpayers paid $2 million for the conservation easement. And beyond that, it was a vote of the people in a bond. So, it's like recently we passed a GO bond where it says, I'm voting to say I want this money to do this purpose, to have this purpose. That's what was initially done back in 1989. And so it's a slippery slope, Brother Jeff, because I think my vote should matter. If I vote for a bond that my taxpayer money should execute a certain purpose, the only way to undo that, I would think, would be to go back to the vote of the people and undo it.
Well, you mentioned that that's 155 acres, and it's hard for me to imagine, how much land that is, because I usually travel up, I believe, like Daddy Bruce Randolph. If you're been around the Mile High Income City for a while, you know that is 34th, and Martin Luther King Boulevard is 32nd. But I usually see that Park Hill golf course from just that, I think it's like Elmish, not Elm, up there by Albion, and then you get back to where those houses are being built, and then it stops. But I imagine it goes back the other way, heading north. Where's all that acreage at?
Yeah, I mean, it extends almost up to 40th, Brother Jeff. It's 155 acres, and it's interesting that you brought up Albion. Like, I'm just looking here at some real estate prices at 34th and Albion. There's some housing coming online that's 1,300 square feet for $460,000. I'll actually add this. The cool thing about us being on Facebook is I'm going to add some comments in here with some links so that viewers can chime in. It goes pretty much all the way almost up to 40th Avenue, and then it's surrounded by all that industrial area. So it's 155 acres, and it's important to note that the city, we've already lost 25 acres because of the storm retention pond that the city has put in there, which is part of the Platte to Park Hill Stormwater Project, which is part of protecting the I-70 expansion and the Stock Show redevelopment.
Well, I could tell you. No, that's all connected, because when you start talking about these deals and this wheeling and dealing, that's one of the reasons why we changed city council people in our areas, because we had a city council person who was more into achieving the business aims of his life, and making sure he was able to rub elbows with the money and the bag and the cheese and the scratch and the cheddar, and shake hands and sign papers, as opposed to looking out for the will of the people who sent them there. And one of the things that tanked him was the lie he told us about the City Park golf course, protecting us from the 100-year flood that had already come. And last night or yesterday it rained, and there was puddles all over the community. I'm like, if this whatever they built over there at City Park can't protect us from a regular rainstorm, and you've got puddles all over Northeast Denver, I later learned that was nothing but attached to some federal funds about getting some highway expansion and all that. And so not only do you have crony capitalists, but you have politicians that will lie right into your face and say, I'm trying to take care of you from 100 years into the future, when they're really just padding their own pockets. It sounds like Mayor Webb was actually looking for the future and saying, I see this development, and let's talk about this easement, and let's give some open space to the future. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, Brother Jeff, and all of this is connected. The Platte to Park Hill Stormwater Project. I posted some links that show a little bit of the history on that, and I got to give it to Mayor Webb. It was a lot of foresight to think that eventually the development would be so rampant that it would overtake the city, and let's preserve this bit of open space because we know that the development is coming. Did we know that it would be driven by crony capitalism and just about the bottom line, and that there would be leadership in place that would partner with that type of mentality? We didn't, but that's what happened. I mean, ideally, and this is where I get optimistic, Brother Jeff, in 2023, we have an opportunity to elect leaders that will only partner with developers that focus on the triple bottom line. And when we talk about the triple bottom line, it's about the social impact, the environmental impact, and the financial impact. That we don't do business with any big developers that aren't going to be focused on that triple bottom line. Unfortunately, developers that are only based on making money and not giving back to the community, not caring about the environment, have been allowed to shape our city in partnership with our city government.
Well, I could tell you it's very interesting to watch, because I knew, and I've studied this thing called gentrification, and for those who think that there is a positive side of gentrification, there really is not. It's a pejorative, and it's building a city or a community on the backs of despair, where you've been able to drive down prices and then attract capital to come in and invest. And I knew that the gentrification was going to come tumbling down, because once folks who come in with good intentions, just because they're able to purchase affordable housing based on their perhaps middle class lifestyle or their social services, etc., lifestyle, eventually those prices keep rising. They keep rising, and it drives out the same folks who bought that property at a discount, Now they're not able to keep up, and then it keeps going up. So the thing about COVID-19, it shut the whole damn system down. And I thought it was just going to come from the rising economy, but nobody predicted that there would be a national pandemic, a global pandemic that would hit this market so hard. And while they were lying about this 100-year flood, they're in the midst of something that the world has not seen, period, in recent times.
Yeah, and all the while spending a lot of resources, billions of dollars on legacy projects. And we saw one just had to be put on pause at the stock show, that 42 acres of development there, because it was based off bringing in hotel and lodging taxes. So as this boom was happening, it was great for developers, it was great for people who could afford to live here, but there was that undercurrent of gentrification. And to me, it's gentrification is a form of violence, Brother Jeff.
Yeah, it's economic warfare.
It's a very, very serious, traumatic thing, and that's what's been happening in our city. And this Park Hill Golf Course project is just a microcosm of what's been happening in our city for the last 20 years or so.
Well, Tony, I want to ask this question. I want to follow up on Robert Chase's point, and I want to get right to what I believe the point is. If the people have purchased through a bond an easement that says this should be set aside for open space, and if the folks who own that property took said money, why is this even a question about we need development? We don't have enough. We need to put in grocery store. We need to, utilize this space, which has more space than the Stapleton development. Following Robert Chase's point, why is this even a question? Like, how do you do it? How do you say, I took the money for this, now I want to do something different and let's develop? I mean, I want to know why this is even a possibility.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that crony capitalism, Brother Jeff. Like, in order for that to even be a question with any development, there's a lot of things that would have to happen. There'd need to be like a state court order, because there's state statutes around conservation easements. You'd have to have the mayor and the city attorneys on board, and you'd have to have at least 7 city council members who would vote to remove the easement and then change the zoning. And so that's why it's such a bold, brash move by the developer, knowing that all of that has to happen in order to develop that land, and going for it. He's going to have to grease a lot of palms and get a lot of political things done to make this happen, because on its surface, this land is not developable, period.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about politics and you talk about the developer, for someone to purchase something with an easement with development in mind, sounds like said person is trying to cash in those chips, those political chips. It's like, easement notwithstanding, I have greased so many pockets to where you watch this easement disappear. And I think that this person or this developer or whoever is sending out the magicians to talk about development, the need for development, I need a grocery store, when we've been sold on a need of a grocery store since like Montbello they still don't have a grocery store, and they have enough population to sustain 5 major grocery stores. So they tend to always come to the masses of the people talking about what we need, but in the end, we never get what we need and they get what they want. I see the political wheels turning, because I'm seeing some of the names and faces that are from the black community, at least, and I'm pretty sure I don't know about the Latino community, I don't know about the brown community, but I know the same ones that are in the black community that are well known for taking the bag, the cheese, the cheddar, the scratch, the hey, Oz be important people, and I can talk to them black people, or at least if you do it and I'm black, then you can say at least I was with the black leaders who said that this is all right and doable. I'm starting to see some of them same faces coming up on committees, on boards, on let's talk about said things. And I'm still trying to figure out, since you took my tax money, what is it that we need to be talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting too, always in like the third term of any administration, especially when relationships have been built over 8 years or more. A lot of money was spent on the last election. The mayor doesn't have to get reelected again. What those relationships mean in business and politics, and who gets what out of those years of building those relationships. I mean, I think we're seeing that flush out. There will be people, and it's sad because it divides the community, Brother Jeff. Like between the developers' interests and a particular type of leadership from the city administration, we've got people bickering over scraps in the community. And to your point, we've needed a grocery store and workforce development and great alternatives for youth in that neighborhood and affordable housing for eons. That's not new. We should have had it a long time ago.
Well, when you start thinking about developers and dividing the community, I challenge you to show me one or at least two developers that have a relationship with the black community in any way, shape, or form or fashion that we could say, hey, that's a friend of ours. We see all of their names on these banners on front of public property and private property, and they get property and all those things. And we see, hey, we got our next development. Hey, we're going to build the Great Hall. Hey, we're going to build the Union Station. Hey, we're going to build the convention center. Hey, we're going to build the National Western Stock Show. Show me one of them that has a relationship with ordinary black folks, and I will give you $1,000 to a dime if any person who even works in those environments could walk down the street and you recognize them or their company truck beyond them banners on those fences. And so whatever these developers are talking about in terms of what they do or will do for community, I'm pretty sure that I don't know who they are. And I've been around a while.
Well, I just put a link in the comments of the people who make up Westside Investment Partners, and click on that link and look at the pictures of these guys. I don't know any of them. Never met any of them. They're definitely not from the community. And so what they've got to do, Brother Jeff, and it's the old playbook, is they've got to find people from the community to, be front people and potentially in some cases mislead and tell lies and fake promises in order just to get these guys a pretty big return on their investment.
They're going to have a hard sell on that. And again, I'm talking with Tony Pigford. We're just talking about the Park Hill Golf Course. Me personally, Brother Jeff, I'm not against anybody doing development and handling your rights as a property owner. But my concern is, and I'm not even in the argument of do we need a grocery store? Do we need another parking lot? Do we need to lay some more concrete? My only question is, if you took some money via an easement, that's when I get involved with, like, you took my tax dollars in the tune of 200 million or however much you took, and now all of a sudden you want to say, well, nah, don't worry about that. We need to do some concrete over here. You can't take my money here and then all of a sudden take my money again over here and then say you're going to give me some money back. Even if you spent and gave back the community all those millions for the easement, you'd still be breaking less than even in terms of the deal. And that's these willing and the dealing. Again, I'm not against the development. I don't know what you need. I'm not even in the argument. I just have a question about why is this even a question? And whoever comes up to me first and says, this is a question, this is the answer to that question, I'm going to give you 10 points. You're going to get 10 points off the top, and it's 10 for the win. If you could tell me why you think you should be able to develop after taking easement money and after purchasing a piece of property that you knew an easement was on, and if you say you didn't know, I've purchased enough property to know that there's a thing called a title company that will tell you everything that's on that deed. They'll tell you if you owe Joe the plumber. You can't even sell that house if Joe the plumber has a lien on it. So I think that an easement is probably bigger than a lien. That would, I don't know.
They definitely, you're spot on, Brother Jeff. They knew that there was a conservation easement and are counting on greasing political wheels to make a huge return on their investment. So there's There's the fact that it can't be developed. It's a perpetual easement. There's state statutes that protect it. City council would have to vote to remove it. And then how about voters voting for a bond? Like when I vote for a bond, you know, that's a commitment. You know, I'm not voting and saying I want my money to go to this place and then, based off of who's in office, that's irrelevant. There's environmental issues, Brother Jeff. Like we are 28th in cities, I think, in the country in the amount of park space we have. Open space, in my opinion, should be the last earth that we carve up, you know. We should use underutilized properties and renovate those first. And let me give you an example. I found this interesting. Speaking of voting for a bond, we passed 2A, which was a 0.25% sales tax increase. And that money goes into a pot of money for Denver Parks and Rec to buy more park space and maintain our park space. That money was first used to buy 2.1 acres, Brother Jeff, for $5.1 million. So taxpayers' price for park space is about $2.4 million per acre. And that was over in University Hills off of Island. The developer got the Park Hill Golf Course for $155,000 per acre. So how is my price as a taxpayer $2.4 million for some acre, yet this developer gets it for $155,000 an acre?
And that's why, I mean, free thinkers, we're not throwing shade. We're just asking questions, or at least I'm asking questions, and I always do. This is the type of political leadership that black folks have produced in the last 10, 15 years or so, past 20 years. This is the type of political leadership that has been spawned forward. And he's breaking down these numbers, and what that is saying is these developers, these folks who believe they have a relationship with the black community via these politicians, what the secret is that these developers don't know, or they do know, is that these political leaders have no relationship with ordinary black people. They do not. We don't listen to them. We know they're on the take. We know that they're shady. We know that they are in partnership with these developers. And if you don't believe me, here's the problem that the developer is going to have right now. There was a time when you could just use one black face to represent all black people. And that black person would be able to say, yeah, this is what the black people need, and I'll represent them. Just give me a little something, and then I'll take care of them, all that stuff. That's kind of like how old politics work. But here's what happened, and this is what the developer needs to know now in terms of why that playbook won't work. Those black leaders shot their shot with black folks, and their last shot was when they ponied up for Bloomberg. And they capped and they began to say, stop and frisk wasn't that bad. Them black folks right here locally that, and I get it, they've never been paid politically the money that they were owed for their political capital, their outreach in the community. You know, they probably were hand to mouth, and all of a sudden here comes the seventh richest person in the world coming forth in the name of Bloomberg saying, I just want to be president, and grab them black folks, and they was running around talking about, stop and frisk ain't that bad. We needs Bloomberg. And Bloomberg, them dollars didn't work at all. And if you think you're going to pony them Bloomberg folks out in front of black folks to say, we trust them now, Mr. Developer, you got a hard sell. It's going to be a little rough. You're going to need some more Vaseline.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I got really frustrated, and my blood pressure was high to see black folks caping for Bloomberg, Brother Jeff. Like, I mean, we know what Stop and Frisk did to communities of color in New York. I mean, it's a complete police state. Like, there's families, they're still paying the price for Stop and Frisk. And so to see any person of color or anybody from a marginalized community, I mean, it goes back, Brother Jeff. What's that song I sent you a while ago? What people will do for money? What
yeah.
Do for money?
Yes, indeed.
It's unfortunate. I mean, I hope at some point black folks in particular in Denver can build a black power base that's based off of unity and Ubuntu. I mean, our forefathers did it here in 5 Points. I think we can get there, but we got a ways to go.
Well, I could tell you COVID-19 is the great leveler because when you start talking about these big wigs losing all of this money and they've invested heavily in real estate, and now folks can't pay their mortgages and they can't pay their leases, and some of them are going to be going out of businesses and not being able to make it. The little biscuit and molasses Negroes are going to be the ones that are going to be cut first. They gotta go. They are not. I mean, we got to tighten up our little bottom line. We got to tighten up our little belt, and little Sambo got to make his way on down the road because we just can't afford you anymore. And perhaps your people will take you back, but the odds are they will, because we always leave the door open. We love you. We knew you was trying to. We was trying to get paid, trying to get your money. By the way, 3411 Albion Street is interesting. Is that where the old church used to be?
It's real close to there. It's right by the gas station. This is within a couple of blocks of the golf course. Yeah,
I think the 34th and Albion is where the good parishioners sold Big Mama's church. Big Mama ain't worshiping here anymore, and these folks want to sell this. They put more money in front of us than we could ever imagine, we could ever get, and sold Big Mama's church. There's no good luck in that. Good luck in that.
Not at all. I'm concerned, Brother Jeff. It's going to be an interesting experience to see what happens with Park Hill Golf Course, but I'm concerned that with the power and influence that the developer has and who is in particular offices, plus what certain folks in the community might do, I would hate to see people come out against their best interests, like you just described another way, and then just get mopped up by more gentrification. I mean, that's what's on deck. It's pretty clear. It's obvious.
Well, I could tell you, I believe with the density that is being created, and we know that a lot of growth and development was never on behalf of black people. The Mile High Income City has become whiter than, Maine or Vermont. You might as well be in Connecticut somewhere. But the growth and development is not being produced on behalf of black folks or the black community. And I don't know if I could trust the fact that a new development such as the Park Hill Golf Course would be any different than Stapleton. There were a lot of promises about how that was going to be a little black mecca over there, and a lot of economic diversity and a lot of kumbaya over there in Stapleton. And the only thing they did was kept the Ku Klux Klan name at the end of the day and voted to keep it.
and our city council person for that area agreed to still have that representation of Stapleton. Yeah, it's pretty clear what's on deck. I lost my train of thought there, Brother Jeff, but those amenities, that's what I was going to say. The amenities that we've been wanting for so long, and people are now talking about what they want at Park Hill Golf Course: affordable housing, workforce development, some open space, all of that. The developer that owns that property doesn't do that stuff.
Doesn't do that stuff.
It'd be like you needing heart surgery, yet you go to a neurosurgeon. It's like this developer's only goal is the bottom line. So you got to know who you're working with. To think that would even be possible with their involvement is pretty naively optimistic. I don't like what. Poor choice of words, dog in the fight. I know there will be dog parks. If there's going to be some development over there will be some room for the dogs. And that is not an understatement. Tyrone Hubbard says it's a use restriction, not a conservation easement. Do you know what does this mean? See, this is the legal stuff you were talking about. Tyrone says it's just a use restriction, not a conservation easement. Are they different? Is it a conservation easement? What is a use restriction? What's going on? I sent, and he, first of all, hello to Ty. I know him. He's a great guy. glad that he's chiming in. I actually sent a copy of the easement, and I put it in the link. Within the easement, there are use restrictions, and that's where the whole debate about, it can only be used as a golf course comes in. The golf course is a use restriction within the conservation easement. There is currently a perpetual conservation easement, and perpetual means never ending, that does not allow any other uses unless the uses that are listed in the easement. What Westside is doing is telling the community that the easement states it can only be a golf course, and that the golf course isn't a good use. That's all the easement states. If you read the language, there's broader language than just a golf course, recreational uses and so forth. But this is protected by a conservation easement. I just posted the actual easement in the comments, and there are use restrictions within the easement.
Man, well, I could tell you one of the things that I've been watching is how these political pieces move. I remember Happy Haynes was one of the first people I've seen raise almost $250,000 to get a volunteer seat on the school board. And she came there via the city council, and then made her way to head of Parks and Recreation. So I guarantee you, when I lift up the blanket, lift up the cover, and see who's talking about what should happen and who the power brokers are behind Park Hill Golf Course, even though it's not a city park, I guarantee you, Happy Haynes will be right in there. I guarantee you. These are the black power folks that are behind. I mean, you have black power that is not in front of black people like that, but they are real close to white power. And if you look real close, I guarantee you, you're gonna see Albus Brooks. I'm pretty sure he's got to be in there somewhere. You got to see Mr. Stapleton is not a negative, it's a positive. Mr. Chris Herndon, he's gonna be in there for sure. Mayor Hancock, I know he's got to, everything in the city has to probably go through the mayor at some way, shape, or form. So I would imagine that he's in there. What really confuses me is that I always thought that Mayor Wellington Webb and Mayor Hancock were on the same page, but they seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum on a lot of different things. And this is another example because the big guy, Honorable Wellington E. Webb, he's one of the leading voices in saying, I put this easement together. I know about this deal. You're going to honor what this was all about. Isn't it interesting seeing how this power thing is happening and who's saying what, where, when, and how, and why?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, and I'm honored to work with Mayor Webb on this project and be sure that the easement is honored and so forth. But it's also, there's different sides to the coin. He definitely is on opposite sides of the spectrum on this issue. At other times, he's been a big supporter of the city administration. But it's pretty clear. And one thing that you mentioned, Brother Jeff, you described lifting up the veil, and you would see in your example, Happy Haynes.
Oh, she's gonna I'm just putting a prediction out, Tony. I'm telling you, I've been around long enough to know who's been around doing what, who benefits. I don't know where they bury all their eggs at. Like when they go and retire into the sunset and they sit on top of that big golden whatever pile of coins. I don't know, but I guarantee you, some of the most powerful people in Denver city politics, and as it relates to black folks, I could tell you who's behind the scenes. And even though I haven't seen them yet, when the money sends out their magicians to try to sell all of that stuff, because remember, they used to always send Happy Haynes out as the school board person saying, we're just listening to the community, want to get your input, and you guys don't want to close down Manual? We're closing down Manual. Gilpin is a school that they pass, they're not failing, but at one point we got to take it away and make them a failing school. And Happy would always say, well, we could have done better, but we're taking that school. And so you got some folks in the black community that will pull the trigger on behalf of white supremacy and will do it with a smile.
Yeah. That's unfortunately sad but true. But on the flip side, Brother Jeff, optimistically, they can be beat and knocked out of office. You know, we saw it with Councilman Brooks. You know, and these weren't leaders of color, but for the first time in Denver history, we had 3 incumbents beat last cycle: Sussman, Brooks, and Wayne New. And so I think that there's just an opportunity there to elect a different type of leader. And I think we're hopefully moving in that direction.
I think we are. The mayor had to be doing the cabbage patch after that election because he just barely made it in, and he was running. I mean, man, I mean, the money's nervous. We've seen the money running around. The money is very nervous. Wayne Vaden, my good friend Wayne, he knows a lot about this stuff, and I know he knows a lot about how this works. He says, is a conservation easement or a continuation? Is it a conservation easement or a continuation on the discriminatory covenant that was enforced when we were kids, keeping Park Hill Golf Course private and exclusive for who? Now Wayne brings up man, that's a mouthful, and that is a valid question. Wayne has seen this. He's seen how these pieces move for a long time also. Is this conservation easement just another catchphrase for continuating this discrimination and making sure that if black folks have a final chance to get involved with a major project, it makes sure that said folks are not included?
No. And this is, again, fanning the flames of turning people against each other in the community. Is there a history of Park Hill Golf Course being exclusive and not a welcoming place to black folks? Sure. Is this conservation easement, was it intended to, in perpetuity, be sure that black folks couldn't excel in North Park Hill? No. That's not the point of the conservation easement. And even having that conversation is getting us off track. I mean, in essence, and maybe he should ask that question directly to Mayor Webb, if that was his intent, to keep his own, to keep black folks out of off that land. Well,
yeah, that's a counterpoint. You make a good point. The big guy, the Honorable Mayor Wellington E. Webb. Listen. Mayor Webb, in my opinion, was the last black mayor. In terms of, and I'm not talking about that Joe Biden who is and who ain't black. I'm talking about who went to bat for black community, made sure that there were certain deals in place that included black folks. I know black folks that benefited from his administration and his policies and were part of projects, and I heard with my own ears certain things stopped if black folks weren't included. You know, that was the last of that kind of conversation. Seeing a black administration in Pierre's Supper Club on Downing and having informal meetings with the mayor over catfish in Pierre's Supper Club. You know, you knew where he was at. You knew, the house is right here around the corner. I really think that following that line of thought and thinking from the Honorable Wellington E. Webb and, of course, his great better half, Wilma Webb, who, his thinking was not along, let's free up and keep this open space so that discriminatory practices could remain in place in perpetuity. I'm not gonna put that one on the big guy.
Yeah, it's basically a ridiculous question that's meant to deflect away from the issues and also incite division within the community. And I know Wayne Vaden and their family has done a lot of tremendous things, and I hope that I have a chance to talk to Wayne sometime more about the real issues here and not throw out and lob that divisive rhetoric. We don't need it, especially now.
Well, I don't think Wayne was saying it was. I think he said is. Is. He's like me. He's just putting out questions. Wayne's a big thinker. He's a deep thinker, and I think that with someone like Wayne at the table, You may have an honest broker. You do.
Well,
I trust Wayne. I think you have an honest broker, but I don't know what you're brokering, because if the money was taken for a conservation easement, regardless of what the restrictions are, into perpetuity, I don't know what the brokering is. That's my question. I mean, whether I want something or I don't want something, and I do believe in private property and people doing what they want with their property within the law, but if those folks took that money on behalf of our bond and our tax dollars, then I'm still trying to figure out where's the bargain. Are you asking me to just say never mind? Because I'm not. I'm probably not.
That's what they are asking, Brother Jeff. That's what the mayor's administration, the developer, is asking. They're saying, never mind about the easement. Who cares about the bond vote? None of that matters. We're skipping forward to development. And that's just, it's unconscionable. It's brash. It's bold. It's audacious. And so I hope that people realize that's where we're at with the Park Hill Golf Course.
Well, I think, Tony, I might be having a one-sided conversation. I think I'll have to bring someone in the Free Think Zone that has a totally different opinion. And if that's you, inbox me, because I'm willing to hear what it is. I just don't know what it could be. And just because I don't know what it could be doesn't mean that a B is not there. And so I would be interested to hear someone say, no, it's not a conservation easement. No, we didn't take $2 million. No, there was not a bond issue. And yes, this allows for development. And yes, we need more density in the Mile High Income City. And no, Brother Jeff don't care about another 10,000 neighbors in and around Park Hill, Stapleton, Lowry, whatever you want to call these great landfills that were the biggest neighborhood developments in the country at the time, via Stapleton, Forest City, all these other places. And yes, Brother Jeff saw them put together a vote that said that let's keep the name Stapleton, and the only people who could vote were property owners. And the more property you own, the more land you had, the more votes you had. And since those are the type of people who have entered the political arena, I don't trust any of them any further than I could throw them, and I can't throw nobody too far. I don't trust them.
I can't argue with you much there, Brother Jeff. I just hope that the facts can get out about what happened and what has led up to this place and what legally has been done, what the voters have voted on. Ask the right questions,
Yeah.
Why do taxpayers pay so much for acreage for parks when a developer gets a particular deal? Dig into campaign finance contributions. I spent 10 minutes this morning, Brother Jeff, just looking at the managing principal of this investment company, and I came up with, it was over $18,000. Herndon, Hancock, Brooks, Stacy Gilmore were the leading recipients of those contributions. And that's just 10 minutes over a cup of coffee, over $15,000. And that's not dark money. That's not the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they filtered through independent expenditure committees to be sure that people were in power to hopefully get rid of this easement. It's all pretty clear.
Well, the city is open for sale, and COVID-19 has given us a lot of time to sit down and look into the details and the minutia of things. Speaking of minutia, how about some chubby curls? Educating the natural community one scalp at a time. If you got those little skinny curls, make them chubby. Chubbycurls.com. You can do your part to support small business by shopping online. Business is still open. And you can go to brotherjeff.com and make a donation of any amount. brotherjeff.com. We're powered by the people. We're not powered by those developers. As a matter of fact, they won't give us a dime, and it's all right. We're not really caught up on what they do. We are still moving forward. We have paid hazard pay. We have not cut hours from our employees. We have not furloughed. We have not done any of that because we are powered by you, and we appreciate what you do. As a matter of fact, I've got 4 t-shirts left from a black business in Park Hill, by the way. Miss T's. Go to 33rd and Holly and go in and get your mask. Go in there and get your items. And if you make a donation, a contribution of $30 or more, I'm going to send you your Straight Out of Quarantine t-shirt. Straight Out of Quarantine. And the reason we had to add $5 is because it costs $5 in terms of shipping. So we're supporting the post office as well. We got 4 more shirts. I think I got a small, 2 larges, and an extra large left. And then I'm going to go find another small business, buy up a bunch of their stuff, and give it away, or in the free think zone. With that being said, what is your vision for the Park Hill Golf Course? If you had your druthers, Tony Pigford, someone who has generations of life lived, of experiences and sweat equity right here in this city, what would be done with that Park Hill Golf Course?
Gosh, I think we have to respect the initial intent of the easement. That easement can be tweaked by city council and by the owner of the property. And I would really hope that the people in North Park Hill and around that property could really make it something very beautiful within the conservation easement uses, and dream big. There's a lot of wonderful things that could be done. Outdoor education opportunities. I look at that part of the area as far as gang violence, and our city administration's response has been hanging shot spotters, Brother Jeff. And we have an opportunity to do something completely different with outdoor education that could fit within the easement. And so I would say that I would like the city to buy it, and buy it with the funds from 2A. I'll post this in the comments real quick. That 0.25% tax increase that is supposed to raise money to increase our park space, there's money left over there to buy that property. And then I would like to see the community really work to see within the easement restrictions what a beautiful open space they can make it to benefit not only the surrounding community, but the whole city and region.
Oh man, with you saying that, Tony, I think I just had a vision. I think I could see an out in this. I think I could see a possibility, but we've got to put in some parameters, because these dollars, these developers, they're greedy. They don't want to give back. And if they do give back, they give back probably the people who already have. In other words, they give back to politicians who vote in their way, which allows them to keep going. And it's this ugly cycle under what you coined, or not coined, but shared in terms of crony capitalism. The city could buy it, but the city would have to buy it not at the people's rate. Remember, you said the people had to pay millions of dollars per acre. We need to buy it at the at the city's rate. See, because what they'll do is they'll do a trick bag, and you got to watch these tricky ones that are in office right now, because they're real slick, they're real slippery. And so if they don't get you in the wash, they'll get you in the rinse. And what that means is they'll go back to their bosses, the ones they work for, because they don't really work for the people. They go to their bosses and they'll say, well, I done talked to the people, and you heard Brother Jeff and Tony talking, and they on to this easement conservation thing, and we can't, I thought I'd be able to just say, all right, don't worry about it. We give you the permits to do what you got to do, and we'll go ahead and bury that stuff that was in the title documents and the deeds and all that stuff. But it won't go away, because the people are awake, and even white folks is paying attention to it too. And that make it more difficult for me, because, they really don't listen to me. But so with that being said, he'll say, here's the deal. We'll just buy it for you, but we'll buy it for $3 million an acre. And that way, all the money you was going to get for your development, we'll just give it to you on the front end, and we'll let Brother Jeff eat it again like he ate that easement money and that bond money, because we keep using him until he's used up. And so don't worry about it. We's buy it, boss, and we buy it at high price, and you won't lose a dime, and it's all good. And as a matter of fact, since I'm in my final term, or since we getting voted out of office, can you do like we did for Albus Brooks and just hire us before we even get out of office? You redeveloping the low income housing, and white men can black men work for white men and just give us job? Give us job.
It's crazy, brother Jeff. The way that the purchase should go, in my mind, is and you know this, and you have a realtor at home there, is give an appraisal. And it's been appraised before. You appraise the 155 acres for the value that it would have under a conservation easement, and that would be the price. It's been done before when this has been thought about by the city. The money's already there. We have leftover money from 2A, which is specifically intended to acquire additional lands for parks. I think that that's what should be done, and that community around there can talk ideally about what great uses it can have under the easement, and it can be a beautiful thing. No more gentrification, no more people coming in from outside the neighborhood taking over spaces.
Well, that's what happens when you go and you travel around the country and you get those political contributions from New York and LA and all the big places. Them donations come due.
Well, it's a trip, brother Jeff. You were talking about, you used to be able to go to Pierre's and see Mayor Webb, or something. Now, some of our city leaders and city council people, in fact, spend more time in other states and in other countries than they do in their own backyard. Literally, that much travel. It's crazy.
Well, I could tell you, I would take a page out of the big guy's book, the Honorable Wellington E. Webb, when I think it was Castile Properties, and I remember the city council people who were willing to put them poor people out in East Village so that the developers could develop what you see that's developed now. I know who you are, you know who you are, and some of you got fancy names on buildings around that. And I also remember when we had community centers like the Five Points Community Center, Northside had a community center, all the communities had centers that the community ran and it was owned by the city, but the communities had them, and then all of a sudden the cities took them over, and then all of a sudden the people didn't have a place, but these bureaucrats had offices to do all their kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is, when those developers were going to put the poor people out, and I remember when they put the eviction notices on all their doors, Wellington E. Webb said, you're not evicting these poor people, and if you think you are, you ain't getting no permits in the city, and we'll buy it, and we ain't buying it for that price. Here's how much we gonna buy it for. So forget all that market stuff or whatever. You got the money, you got the property dirt cheap off of your political handshakes and kind of inroads. Don't think you're gonna get market rate top dollars on your way out. And if the big guy was in office, the big guy would let them know. But we got the little guy in office, and he gonna figure out how to make sure them folks get their money.
I hope not, brother Jeff. I encourage all the viewers to reach out to your city council people, reach out to the mayor's office, mainly city council, because they're the ones who are going to have to ultimately vote to remove an easement, to ignore the vote of the people, and all of that. And so definitely engage your elected officials for sure.
Well, we've had a great conversation about the Park Hill Golf Course. Wayne Vaden seems to believe that if we don't do something with it, there'll be a fenced-in area with weeds.
No, West Side's committed to like 3 years, I guess, is the sort of the clock. But if after a certain amount of time goes by, they're going to either have to put it back to operational golf course or agree to tweak the easement and change that, which they'd have to agree to with the city and the community. And so,
well, if it was a fenced-in area with weeds, the Mile High Income City has a lot of fine, people in new cars that are driving around looking for weeds in alleys and weeds on corners. So they're gonna get a big ticket. If it's a fenced-in area with weeds, they're gonna have to cut them, or they're gonna get a ticket, a fine.
Right now, I'm fine with it open versus an area that's got $650,000, $700,000 houses there that people in the community can't afford, and it exacerbates gentrification.
What's wrong with just having a park? What's wrong with the people having a big A park? You know what I mean? People would come from all over the world to say, well, the Mile High Income City has a 155-acre park, public owned.
I mean, imagine Central Park in New York if it didn't exist, Brother Jeff. And more development is coming. Like, we're going to be dead and gone, and they're still going to be tearing up concrete and trying to build stuff. Like, if we don't protect the open space that we have, we can never go back. This is about future generations. It's beyond us.
Wow. Well, I could tell you this. I didn't dig into the comments because I don't often. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there's some good stuff in there for anybody who has answers. And I admit, I don't have a dog park in this fight. I don't believe developers. I don't believe you care if I have a grocery store or not. I don't believe if you think that I deserve quality education. I don't believe you want to close health disparities. I don't believe you want to close a racial or income gap. I do believe that those who have are committed to make sure they continue to have at the expense of those who don't have, and it's just in the DNA. And of course, there are a lot of good people of all races, backgrounds, persuasions that are fighting against that. And that's what they're nervous about. They're nervous that they've got a lot of eyeballs on these real thick pieces of paper that was signed, at closing, whole bunch of stuff, signature there, signature there, signature there, and it's explained along the way, and they probably was all caked up with attorneys, and the folks was like, oh, we about to get some more money. They cabbage patching, and we got our administration in, and woo, we almost didn't make it, but since we did, we got a last term to get it in. Times are changing. And I believe that, of course, I'm one-sided with this. If you have a different point of view, you are always welcome in the free think zone. This is not the amen corner. This is not the choir. If you can tell Brother Jeff that there is not an easement, that there is nothing that you signed that says you cannot develop in any way you want to, because I think private owners should be able to do with their private dollars whatever they want within the legal spectrum. But once you tapped into Brother Jeff and that bond issue and that easement, you's gonna hear from me.
Yeah. Me too.
You're gonna hear from me.
Too.
And
I encourage all voters, like the bonds that were passed recently in the Go bond, we're talking billions of dollars. Be diligent. Be sure those dollars are being spent where you voted for them to go. Don't get hoodwinked and let developers and political interests shift where your money goes. It's a pretty straightforward, clear, democratic and legal principles, Brother Jeff. It's cut and dry.
Speaking of bonds, I remember the big guy, Mayor Wellington E. Webb, was in the Blair Caldwell African American Research Library, another example of the last vestige of black leadership. We were concerned that the library was going to be closed and it was going to be gentrified. They were going to take the pictures down and put up something more kumbaya-ish and, more we are the world-ish, and take away from the intent in terms of the community in that library and what it represents, the history of black people in the West. And the big guy came in and they were talking about bonds and putting in money to make sure the library would get upgraded, etc. I'm happy to say that I've been following that, and the library is getting its upgrades.
Yep.
It's getting its
another perfect example.
It's getting its upgrades.
And what if that didn't happen, Brother Jeff? Like, what if they just said, "Oh, just kidding. That money that you wanted to go to Blair Caldwell now."
No, we followed them. We followed them. We wanted to make sure we were like, well, I know there's some other libraries that need it too, and you're gonna put us at the back end and blah blah blah. I'm only concerned that they're thinking about closing the library for, I don't know, a long period of time. I'm not sure. I'll update everybody on the Blair Caldwell African American Research Library. Today's program brought to you by Sandra Weathers. Just made her donation. Sandra, I appreciate you. Let's see. Everybody, again, who went to brotherjeff.com, made a donation. I appreciate you. I do know who's hiding behind the curtain, making sure that they are getting ready to grease the pockets of the big developers. And this is not throwing shade, but if I was starving and I was dying of thirst in the desert and I saw Albus Brooks, Chris Herndon, and Happy Haynes in a flowing fountain of water, I'd know it was a mirage, and I'd head my black self the other way. I'm telling you, I promise.
How do you really feel?
No, that way. I'm going, and I like them all personally, but I'm just talking about policies. You just follow a person's policies, and I have seen the detrimental impact of vote after vote after vote after vote. And yes, they do great things, but they don't do it on behalf of black folks. They do it on behalf of all folks, which usually means not on behalf of black folks. And I've seen too many schools closed. I've seen a vote to keep the Ku Klux Klan name in the name of Stapleton is a positive, not a negative, from a man who's in a position, who's in an interracial relationship, who should at least know how much he is hated by the Ku Klux Klan and his children. And our community had been fighting against that name since it was not even an airport, it was a damn airstrip. Fighting Stapleton, and then at the end of the day, here comes somebody who co-signed saying if you own property, you could vote, and if you got more property, you get more votes, and you vote with the Klan. I'm like, if I see you in the desert and I'm dying of thirst, and I see you with some flowing water, I know it's a mirage, and I'm going that way.
Yeah.
That way. That way. When you get out of office and I see that the projects, low income housing has been sold and developers are developing it, saying a few people get to come back and they hire you before you even get out of office. You've been working for them all that time. I'm going that way.
Yeah.
That way.
No, it's a trip, Brother Jeff. I mean, you call it the Mile High Income City. It's become a playground for the rich, a playground for people to prop up white supremacist symbols like Stapleton. When we know the true measure of the health of any city is the plight of its most vulnerable. How are our homeless doing? How are our formerly incarcerated doing? How are our elders doing? Communities of color. And my argument is over the last 20 years, the plight of marginalized communities has worsened.
Man.
Under leadership of all different types of colors. And so I'm hopeful that we can end that, but we've got to really start to look at electing leaders and standing for values of people in the most marginalized positions. Because until we do that, we're just going to have more mass inequity and mayhem.
Well, I appreciate you, Tony Pigford. Thanks for all you do, you free thinkers. I appreciate you, all of you who have gone to brotherjeff.com, made donations of any amount. Let's keep looking out for each other, and that's what COVID has allowed us to do. It has allowed us to look out for each other even more. We are needed one another even more than ever. I understand the city is going to suffer about $180 million hit, which means that $50 ticket that became a $100 ticket post or pre-COVID is now going to be a $200 and $300 ticket, because this Mile High Income City deals with growth and development off the backs of poor people and the people who can afford it less. So make sure when the city opens, you just watch how these tickets are going to go up. That money's going to come from somewhere, and it ain't going to come from these developers. It's going to come from the people, because that's just the way it is. That's the way it is, and that isn't the way it has to be.
We can circulate our dollars in our community, Brother Jeff. You encourage it all the time, whether it's Chubby Curls, making a donation to your network. Let's circulate those dollars within the black community and get better and better at that. That'll make a big difference.
Well, in my closing remarks, I just want to say I appreciate you all. Wayne Vaden, I appreciate you. I know you've got a wealth of information. I'm not opposed to hearing the other side of the story, because I don't have one side of the story. I don't trust the folks that say they're going to develop on my behalf. I definitely don't believe that. But if there's a possibility that the people who have purchased that property are somehow being mistreated, we stand up for those who are mistreated. If you're a developer being mistreated, we'll get on whoever's helmet's on your helmet. So,
chances are slim, Brother Jeff. The developers have had the red carpet rolled out.
Well, if your rights are being infringed upon in this great Mile High Income City, we will scream it from the mountaintop and say, you cannot mistreat our developers who purchase property and are now not able to do what they want to do because of mistreatment. we stand up for whoever's getting mistreated, and it doesn't matter who it is. Tony, final words for you, bro. What's your final words?
Oh gosh, Brother Jeff, I've just really been beyond the Park Hill Golf Course and everything, and it being a microcosm of what's been going on in our city. I just want to send love and good vibes out to the Black community in particular through the COVID-19 crisis. We've got to stick together. We've got to look out for ourselves. I think that there's going to be some hard days ahead, but we've been through some trials and tribulations before. We're going to come out of this triumphant. Like we have in the past. And so I just want to send out love and grace to the Black community in particular, but humanity in general as we go through this new normal. Stay diligent, stay safe, do your research, speak truth to power, and you got to go down swinging, right, Brother Jeff?
You got to go down. If you go down swinging, because we feel no ways tired. That's what they used to say back in I feel no ways tired. Go down swinging, you just might score a knockout. Rumble, young man, woman, and community. Rumble, and let's keep our eyes on this Park Hill Golf Course. It's the next big deal, and I'm getting calls about it every single day. So we'll just start talking about it and make sure that you're informed. And more information gives you more power, and more power gives you more leverage in your own life. Go down swinging. Rumble, young man and woman, and community. Rumble. Right on, Tony P.
Thank you, Brother Jeff. Be safe now, man.